So in this video, we're going to quickly go over how we can get our enemy to start taking damage. And since the process is so similar to our player character, I'm just going to do a code overview of what I already have instead of walking us step by step. So I'm going to go ahead and first revisit my Gambit controller script. I think there's a few blocks of code I might have missed in the last video. Um, in our knocked down function right here, go to your Gambit player controller script or whatever you decide to call it, and just kind of make sure that your code is looking the same here. I believe I have a few lines of code that are missing or one that's commented out. So uh, just look through this code I have right here, make sure it kind of matches. I think I have a play set animator.play idle over here. Get rid of that, and all we got to do is set knock down to false. I think that was one of the biggest differences here. So after you revise your knockdown function, I'm going to go ahead and move over to attack collision script. And if you look right here, this is our player take damage. All right. Well, I've already kind of written out our enemy take damage script. The only differences between the two are instead of finding player state, we're finding enemy state. And we do that by going to other object, which is what object we're colliding with. And we're getting the parent of that game object by, when we initialize other object right here. And then we're getting the component enemy state. So basically these two lines of code are saying, okay, we're hitting our enemy hitbox here. I'm going to look at the parent object, which is Sentinel. Then I'm getting the component, which is our enemy state script right here. All right. And then all the rest of the logic is basically the same. It's pretty much the same line of codes. We're accessing the stat script so we can adjust our health right here. And then we're using the same conditional logic here. We're checking for knockdown attacks and this and that. But you'll also notice that as you're typing this out, enemy state.knockdown and enemy state.took damage, these variables will not exist until we go into our enemy state script like so and make these two public Boolean variables right here. All right. So in your enemy state script, go ahead and pull that up. Go ahead and make these four variables right here. Two public bools took damage and knocked down, and two public floats are stun time and knocked down. Or knockdown time, rather. And once you make those, then we'll be able to access those these two variables just like we were able to with our player script down here. All right. So after we get our public variables set up in our enemy state, we're going to have to make the logic so when our enemy gets hit, he knows what to do. All right. So let's go through our logic tree here. Let me go ahead and put an else if there. What we're going to do is originally you probably started with the attack block of code here. And if it looks a little bit different, I just probably used to look like this for you. I just broke it up for readability's sake after each double ampersand and making sure my parentheses are still, on either side, right, like so. What we're going to do now is we're going to have to add two new conditional statements above this if. So go ahead and make that first if statement an else if, and then add these two conditional blocks of code above it, just kind of like how we did with our Gambit controller script. If I bring up my Gambit controller script, we have these two conditional lines of code. If we're just putting those, took damage equals true, knocked down, all that stuff over here. So we're going to look and see if knocked down equals true and took damage equals false, then we're going to set our animator bool labeled knocked down true, and then we're going to make a new coroutine function or knocked down. And same thing below it, else if we just simply took damage, then we're going to set our animator parameter is hit to true, and we're going to call our coroutine we're going to make in a second took damage. So these Boolean parameters, we look into our animator window and make sure you have your Sentinel sprite object selected. So you bring up the correct animator window. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to set up our, let me make this a little bit bigger. We're going to have to set up our animator window like this, kind of the same way we did with Gambit, but a little, maybe just a little bit different. First of all, break the any state thing we have going on. You can select transitions and press delete on your keyboard to break those up. The first thing we're going to make sure to do is double click our hurt and double click our fall nodes and make sure loop time is not checked. We don't want these looping over and over and over again. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to make transitions from hurt to idle, and we're going to add the condition is hit to false, meaning as soon as my is hit boolean is no longer checked, then we're going to cycle back into idle. Same thing for fall. So if we make a transition from fall to idle, we're going to make sure we have an exit time and knockdown equals false. Make sure that both of these transitions, the exit time is checked for hurt and for fall. So with our animator window set up correctly now, we can hop back into our enemy state. And the reason why we set our knockdown boolean and our is hit boolean to true, if you'll notice on our animator window, we don't have any transitions going directly to hurt and fall. So why would we ever set the parameter to true? Because there's no if we were going to walk, we have walk equals true, or if we were going to attack, attack would equal true. But we don't have any transit. That's because we're manually playing our animations and our coroutines. But we need to have these two blocks of code or these two parameters knocked down and this hit. Depending on which one we're in, we need to have those true. So when we set the boolean to false, it'll transition nicely back into our idle. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So after we have our two conditional statements set up like so, all right, go ahead and add a took damage equals false in the next block of code below it. Remember, this is our attack block of code. And in fact, just for readability's sake, you can say attack logic. You can almost label these, take damage. If you're getting confused about what your conditional statements are doing, get knocked down. These comments shouldn't break them up. They should just help for readability. Walk to player. So I'm going to comment these out just so you guys can know what we're doing. So in your attack logic block, you can tell which one that is by looking at the animator.setBool attack. If the attack equals true, then it's your attack block. I added a took damage equals false, meaning that this is going to ensure that if we're attacking, then if we've taken damage, we can attack. Yeah, because we don't want to attack the enemy and him ignore it and go straight into an attack. So that took damage equals false. We'll do that. And I just went ahead and added, knockdown equals false, took damage equals false, and the rest of these blocks of code, just to make sure that we can't walk or idle or attack if we're currently knocked down or if we currently have taken damage. So where I've highlighted these, take damage equals false. All right. So now that we got our conditional logic set up just right, and let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see the full picture here. So all this block, all these highlighted conditional functions, this is our brain of our character, right? And the first two dictate if we get knocked down or if we've taken damage. And we're starting making these coroutines called knockdown and took damage. And really, I'm going to scroll on down here. Really, these coroutines are basically the exact same as we saw in our player character script or our Gambit controller script. All right. So by that, I mean, as soon as we call our coroutine, we make I enumerator took damage, and then we add our brackets here. Nothing new here. And then the first thing we do is we access our animator.play, and when we immediately play our hurt animation, like so. All right, so after we play hurt, we're going to wait for seconds, yield return new, wait for seconds for our stun time, the amount of time that we will set in our inspector over here. And then after our stun time is over, after we wait for seconds for our stun time, we're going to access our animator again, and we're going to set our boolean is hit, the false. When our is hit boolean is false in this transitional arrow, in this transition path, we know that we can transition back into idle. So we do one hurt animation, and then is hit is set to false, and we transition back into idle. And we also want to reset our took damage boolean flag, because in our attack collision, whenever we are hit with our player attack, enemy state.took damage equals true. So our took damage right over here, I've selected my Sentinel game object, and I'm coming over to the enemy state script that we're currently working in. So our attack collision script that I have pulled up right now, this conditional statement right here says, okay, if we've been hit and it's not a knockdown attack, then I'm going to check took damage to true. And then we go to my enemy state script, and it looks at, okay, if took damage equals true, then I'm going to set the parameter for is hit to true, and I'm going to start the coroutine, took damage, and I'm going to play that animation, the hurt animation, but I'm going to wait for the amount of time that we're going to be stunned before is hit is set back to false, so we can transition back into idle, and before took damage equals false, so we can go back to Sentinel, and took damage will be unchecked again. And it's really the same, almost the exact same lines of code for knockdown. Just make sure that you're calling the right animations to play. Make sure you're waiting for the right amount of time for knockdown. And make sure that you're setting your Boolean flags, knockdown, defaults, and just making sure you're calling all your right kind of variables and parameters in each coroutine. Don't confuse which parameters or variables you're setting in each of these coroutines. All right, so I believe that's about it for code. So as soon as you get your coroutines made, then your start coroutine took damage and start coroutine knockdown should be working. All right. So we're going to select our Sentinel now. And before we can really test the scene, make sure your stun time is set to something reasonably low, like 0.1. And make sure your knockdown time over here is set, to how many seconds you want the enemy to be knocked down on the ground. So if I hit play now, and I go to attack my enemy, well, before he's kind of beating me up now. There we go. 2 seconds on the ground. This guy's too strong. There we go. I just want to make a quick note. If you feel like the enemy is attacking too slow or the enemy is attacking too fast, select your Sentinel sprite game object that has the animator component attached to it, so we can get at the right animator window. And you can go and select each attack block, and you can adjust its speed to be as fast or slow as you want it. If I made a speed 0.5 on everything, then we would see our Sentinel attacking half as fast, half the speed he was before. So you look how much slower he's attacking. And conversely, if you want a shorter stun time, you can also speed up the animation of hurt, because whenever our enemy's in our hurt animation, he's basically locked up. So I can make it something like real slow, like 0.3, and he'll be locked up for longer. So you can see him in the stun phase a lot longer, like so. But just be careful how you edit these speed values, because it could interfere with the simple logic we set up. If you attack too fast, our Sentinel may be in a hurt state, and maybe the second hit wouldn't register the animation. It might look weird, or maybe the fall animation just wouldn't trigger at all. So if you're messing around with your speeds in your animator window for your enemy and your player, just make sure that you're not going too fast or too slow. Make the game logic work for us here in this regard. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. I think I showed you everything you need to have for your enemy animations to be set up for taking damage. If I've left anything out, just email me, or at this point in the game, you guys should be able to figure something out. You should be able to troubleshoot, hopefully. All right, so I'm just going to scroll through the code for each of my scripts dealing with the lesson, just so you can double check the code. I'll zoom in a little bit. So in our enemy state script, I have something looking like this. And you can pause the video. All right, that's the enemy state script. For our attack collision script, I got it looking like this. And I do want to make one quick note. I have this bit of logic right here that I don't think I covered in any of the videos that I just kind of made real quick. This is basically accessing the player and then getting to the gamut controller script and looking at the knockdown flag. And if it's false, then we won't attack, or then we will, yeah, we won't attack. Yeah, or actually, yeah, this is what happens. If our player character is knocked down, then we won't attack. But if our player character is still up on his feet, or otherwise, if knocked down is false, then we can attack. This line of code basically makes sure that our enemy is just not standing over our dead body attacking. And there's one more thing we got to do to make that work. If we go to our enemy site script, we have to make our game object player public. Before, I think I had it private. So make sure that your game object player is public, because in our awake function, we go ahead and find the game object with tag player and initialize what player is. So our enemy state script right here can access that knockdown value. All right, so that's all the code and that's all the logic we did. The next few videos, we're going to be looking at how we can make this into a functioning game with some simple UI elements, with some simple camera tracking, and just some simple game management. All right, I'll see you then.